Hi, I'm Robbie Bobby. This video is the 8th in a series that examines the laundry list, otherwise known as the 14 traits of an adult child. The topic is trait 8, which reads, "We became addicted to excitement." Out of all 14 traits, this one is the shortest, delivering its message with only 5 words. But don't let its size fool you. It's as deep as any other. In fact, it's deeper than most people initially think. And like most traits, it can be interpreted and experienced many different ways. However, if you have a limited or narrow understanding of what the trait means, it will naturally limit your identification with it. In fact, it's possible to have the trait and not realize it. So let's look into it. The trait starts with the standard opening, "We became," which leaves only 3 words to interpret, along with the question, if one wants to look into it, of when did we become this? In other words, when did we develop this trait? We'll get back to that question at the end. For now, let's break down addicted to excitement. The hallmark of any addiction, in my opinion, is when the thing one desires does not satisfy the need for it. In fact, it does just the opposite. It increases it, which creates a vicious cycle, leading to unmanageability. Obvious examples include alcoholism, where the alcoholic's desire for alcohol can never be met by drinking it, or the codependent's need for control, which is also never satisfied. Likewise, the needs which underlie the 14 traits cannot be fulfilled by acting them out. The need to isolate, trait 1, are at best temporarily satisfied by isolating, which is why we isolate over and over again. And each time we do, we abandon ourselves, which only increases the need to isolate. The same for approval seeking, trait 2. Receiving approval only makes us crave it more. The same is true with excitement in trait 8, which leads to an unconscious compulsion to re-experience the mental state of being excited, which ACA refers to as hitting the inner drugstore. Why do we do this? To understand, I think it's important to look at trait 8 in the context of the other traits, because while we discuss them individually, they're all products of our dysfunctional childhoods. They are all effects of being raised in an alcoholic or otherwise dysfunctional family. That is the common denominator of all the traits. And the common thread is fear of abandonment. By the way, this is not simply my opinion. Tony A., who wrote the laundry list in 1978, stated at an ACA convention in 1991 that fear was the common thread through all of the traits. And the biggest fear we have as an adult child is fear of abandonment. In that same speech, he mentioned that he originally intended for trait 8 to read, "We became addicted to fear," but then changed it to excitement. This gives a clue as to what type of excitement he originally had in mind. Of course, fear is just one type of excitement, but these two feelings often overlap in some of the more extreme examples of acting out this trait, such as bungee jumping, skydiving, rock climbing, or other sports associated with adrenaline junkies. But you can get a similar effect by watching the news, or by simply scrolling through social media. The individual dopamine hits may be smaller, but when you scroll through 60 reels an hour, the effects add up. And the effects put one into a state of fight or flight, which numbs feelings and produces a kind of tunnel vision where unpleasant feelings can remain blocked or repressed. This is the payoff. It's what makes it a defense mechanism or survival trait. And while there's a very long list of behaviors that can be utilized to hijack one's nervous system, if it's only done occasionally, it's probably not an issue. It's normal to want to have fun and experience excitement. However, if done compulsively, the way an alcoholic drinks, then it likely qualifies as a trait. The last perspective that I want to present is what Tony A. himself had to say about it in his book titled The Laundry List, The ACOA Experience, which was published in 1991. It's available in electronic form on Amazon for about $10 and includes a few paragraphs on each trait, as well as the alternative steps, which have greatly influenced all of ACA's literature. In other words, it's worth reading. Anyway, he wrote that as a child, his household was filled with tension, hostility, guilt, and shame, and that he often found himself in the middle of what he described as a turbulent family soap opera. He said that, in some strange way, it was both exciting and fearful, primarily because my parents' actions were so unpredictable when they drank. As a result, I have a tendency to link fear with excitement. He goes on to say, this combination of circumstances made me feel very alive and allowed me to not feel abandoned. It made me feel in the middle of, or part of, something very tense and vital. What a paradox! That the feelings of fear and excitement, which were part and parcel of his abandonment, is what made him feel connected to his family. This seems like a very complex form of denial. It also answers the question of when this trait started. Like all the traits, it has its roots in childhood. It's also understandable why adult children have an unconscious need to reproduce these feelings. They help us deny our own childhood abandonment. Tony's original version of the trait used the word fear. Thinking people would struggle with that concept, he changed it to excitement. Perhaps it should have reflected his actual childhood experience and used both words. I consider this as a valid alternate version of Trait 8. We became addicted to fear and excitement. And that wraps up this video, which was meant to be food for thought. If you got something out of it, please click like and subscribe and forward to a fellow traveler. I'm Robbie Bobby. Thank you for listening, and as always, keep coming back.